everybody. As promised, I'm going to give you a kind of a post-tournament recap of how my first PWBA event went. We are in Eagan, Minnesota at Cedar Vale Lane, so very comfortable with the center, very familiar with the area, which I think is helpful, when you've been to the same place over and over again. There's just a different level of comfort, right? We stay about 2 blocks from the bowling center, so that's very helpful. So week 1, we bowled on 38 feet, 30 mils, and I would say that's probably on the higher side of volume than what we're used to. And I just could not keep up with the scoring pace. I averaged 209 for my 12 blocks, which is very respectable. However, when the scoring pace is much higher, it can be challenging to keep up. So I was only 38 pins out of the cut, and out of 12 games, you can find that pretty much anywhere. A couple extra spares, less splits, a couple extra pins on a fill ball, etc., etc. So, when I kind of assess how did the tournament go, I'm actually content with my performance overall. Obviously, you want to be bowling. That's always the goal, right? The goal for me is always to win, and then it's, how do we get there, right? Obviously, you got to make the cut. If you're not in contention to make the cut, then my goal shifts. It's, finishing off the block on a positive note, making ball changes maybe that I wouldn't normally do, right? And I think that's part of week 1 strategy too. You come out here with your arsenal. I had my 9-ball arsenal, and even though I kind of, in my mind, have my progressions of what the shapes do, what the balls do, there's plenty of moments where when you're throwing a ball that's not right, that you have to change to something else. In your mind, it can be different than what the lane is asking you to do. So it's constantly a learning process of just what my eyes see and what ball do I have that gives me that shape. Now, on this particular pattern, very, very evident that steeper angles were probably going to be the play. Higher rev rate obviously helps that in creating that shape. And just obviously not something I'm necessarily good at, creating that type of shape. And at that point, when you kind of realize that's maybe how it's going to work out, it's okay. I'm not going to all of a sudden increase my rev rates by 200. What do I have in my bag that allows me to kind of play my game, but maybe with surface changes? So we changed some surfaces for the second block, and as it would just work out, the lanes play differently, right? So every time the pattern is laid out, even though it's the same one, it doesn't sit as long. There's just a different mindset going into the block of how to play them. So it's just very different, but it's just the same story from week to week for me. Is just really paying more attention to what the lane is asking me, right? I preach to everybody that I teach, less fighting, more listening. Less fighting the lane, what I think I should be doing, and more listening to what it's telling me to do. And I feel like I did a pretty good job at that. There's many shots I wish I could take back that were just god-awful, but there's so many that were just amazing. So, I can dwell here in wah that I didn't make the cuts and that I'm upset. The competitor in me, of course, wants to play. I don't like watching in that regard, but my roommate bowled really well, Clara Guerrero. This morning she struggled a little bit on block 3, but hey, she got to shoe up and see her balls go down the lane a little bit more. So like I said, it's always kind of a learning process too, if you choose to make it that. So it's kind of my goal for this season too, is just, even if the bowling goes well, to constantly be aware of why it went well. right? It's just as important that when it's going poorly or going well to know why, and just keep building on that, because I think that's what kind of builds us as players, not just on tour, but just in general. Learning your equipment more, making moves quicker, things of that nature. Because if you can be one step ahead of, let's call it the transition or the big four that's about to happen, those frames make a big difference in the long run, and they boost your confidence that you're ahead of it. So moving forward, I'm overall content with how this week went. Again, of course, you always want to be bowling, but there's a silver lining if we choose to see it, right? So for me, I'm choosing to see the fact that got to see most of my bowling balls get down the lane. Maybe in my mind the progression's a little different on this pattern specifically, but moving forward, my mindset's going to be pretty similar. Less fighting, more listening, and just trying to really stay present in the moment, not get caught up with so much of what other people are doing, other than just being aware of what the scoring pace actually is, because I think that's very important. Not being obsessed with it, but being aware of if I'm far off from it, that I got to make some bolder moves and not as play it safe as some patterns maybe allow for you to do. So that's my recap of the Go Bowling Minnesota Open, and just stay tuned moving forward for the ones in the weeks to come.